Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cleveland Guardians Weekly Report. I'm Tim Shirer. You can find me on Twitter at TBBucksTim. But we're going to talk about the past week with the Guardians. We'll go over some stats. Nothing too in depth because we believe in the basics here. We believe that the eye test is how you determine whether a guy is good or not a bunch of stats that a guy who doesn't know which end of the bat to use determines whether a player is good or not. But, the team did not have the best week, 3-4. I predicted they would go 4-3. I thought I did think they'd split in Kansas City, but I thought they'd take 2 out of 3 from Minnesota. The fact that they didn't take 2 out of 3 from Minnesota is pretty sad. But let me get to this first. This show is brought to you by CT Roofing and Power Wash. They can help you with all your roofing and your siding needs. And if you need your deck power washed or your house or your sidewalk or your drive, they can do that for you. They can give you a free estimate on your siding or your roofing. They also build decks. They do some demolition now, too. If you need something demolished, that's a fun word, demolished in your yard. But they work well with insurance companies. They can help you file an insurance claim and, so you don't have to pay for it yourself. You pay for insurance, right? So call them today at 440-278-0506, and hopefully they could get you started. But so the Guardians are currently 21-21 and remain in first place in the AL Central. One game ahead of the Kansas City Royals. That could be a half game if they win tonight. They're currently playing right now, and they're playing the Kansas City Royals. So I guess if we're talking about hanging on to first place, we would probably want the Royals to win. That game is tied right now. We would probably want the Tigers to win, actually. That game is tied 5-5 or 3-3 in the bottom of the fifth. I guess we would want Detroit to win because Kansas City is one game back with the Royals and the White Sox. So if Detroit wins, they'd be a game and a half back. So would the Royals, and the White Sox would be in second place, one game out. So we'll keep an eye on that game. But, it wasn't a good week. The Guardians' run differential is now -4. It was +3 when we met last week. So they were in a negative that. And when we talk about the offensive stats, they bear them out. They bear that out. They were right in the middle of the pack in a lot of offensive stats heading into this week. And now they are not. So we're going to talk about Chase Delauder. Of course, he still remains hot. He's hitting well. Travis Bazzana is of course hitting well too. I think that they hit on these two. We want to, Cleveland loves to rip on the Guardians. Cleveland loves to rip on the Cavs and diminish anything they do positive, especially the Cleveland media. So we're going to talk about Chase Delauder and Travis Bazzana. They're doing well. Bazzana in his time with the team, he's hitting 194, but remember, he started out 0 for 12. So since then, he's 7 for 24. We'll take a look at the last 7 days because Delauder's been hitting well. In the last 7 days, Chase Delauder is hitting 273. Brian Rocchio's actually been the hottest guy on the team. This has not been this was a bad week offensively, folks. But I think Bazzana and Delata are the real thing. Stephen Kwan is not the real thing anymore. We're going to get to that in a second. I've been mentioning this for a while now, that Stephen Kwan's value has dropped. And I wish they would have traded him last summer, because they're not getting anything for him now. They're not going to get much for him if they trade him now. I know he's a Gold Glove left fielder, but so was Miles Straw. Okay? And when he couldn't hit, nobody cared that he was a good Gold Glove center fielder. They basically had to give him away, right? So that's what Stephen Kwan is turning into. Okay? In the last 7 days, Stephen Kwan is hitting a whopping 125. His OPS is 389. Okay? So they probably should have traded him last summer. I don't care if they trade him, or if they trade him, yeah, he's gone. So what? I think he overvalued himself. I think his agent overvalued him. He needs to get on track. Yeah, it's only May 10th, but he needs to get on track, and he needs to get on track fast if he's the player that they think he is. The Cavs, sorry, I've been covering the Cavs playoff run. The Guardians did make a trade yesterday. They traded Matt Tugboat Wilkinson to the Giants and a competitive first-round pick for two-time Gold Glover Patrick Bailey, who is hitting 146 on the year, 3 points higher than Bo Naylor was hitting when they sent him to Columbus yesterday. They're 0-2 without Bo. He was the problem, a lot of fans were saying, but I guess he wasn't the problem, was he? Because they're losing even at a greater pace without him. They were 21-19 with him on the team. They were under 500 when he played, but they won some games when he played, not zero. So I think, I saw some other media outlets ripping the trade, talking about, well, they're not out on the weekend, but they're going to tweet about it, and they're going to rip the Guardians for the trade because, we know that's what they do in Cleveland. Most of the media. Adam the Bull, he tweeted. Really his name should be Adam the Bullshit. Okay? Because that's what he spews. He thinks he knows everything. You can't criticize him, because then he'll get mad at you. He'll talk about you on his show. He did that to me several years back. He got mad at me because I criticized him and airhead Dustin Fox. So when they were still on the radio. But they made fun of my show. The quality wasn't good. Oh, well, okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't good. The quality of my broadcast may not be great because I don't have high-tech equipment, but at least I don't say a bunch of bullshit. At least I know what I'm talking about. If the Guardians need criticized, I will criticize them. Like, I'm not sure about that trade, but I'm not going to rip it apart the day it happens. Because, these same guys, if the Browns made the exact same move for a guard who wasn't as good as the guard, or was just about the same as the guard that he was replacing, they would act like it was a great trade and act like the Browns are an amazing organization. So don't tell me this bullshit doesn't happen in Cleveland, because it does. So let's refer to him from now on, at least on this show, as Adam the Bullshit. Probably get mad. Oh, talk about me on your show. Thanks. Who cares? Who cares what you think? I don't care what you think. I think your opinions are just trash. It's a constant, that ultimate Cleveland sports show whose logo is Browns colors. I mean, come on, people. Come on. 92.3, their logo is Browns colors. Okay? Really? There's 3 teams in this city. Two that win, and the trash you talk about all the time that doesn't win anything. So if you're going to criticize a trade, on the day it happens and act like it's the worst trade, then, all right, you're going to look dumb. Most teams value good defensive catchers. There's not a lot of good hitting catchers in Major League Baseball. Would I like it if Patrick Bailey was hitting higher than 146? Hell yeah, I would. But maybe Austin Hedges doesn't catch most of the time. And he's hitting pretty well this year. He's a guy that you guys probably ripped apart in years past, even though he matters a lot in the clubhouse. People that don't really know baseball, which none of those two talk sports stations in Cleveland know anything about baseball. They don't have a clue. And if they used to know, they don't anymore because they obsess over the Browns. It's pathetic. So screw that. But I'm just going to say this about that trade. People who are complaining, they traded Tugboat. Oh, my God. He's a minor league pitcher with a cool nickname, right? And then those people will say, well, he pitched a no-hitter last year. Well, guess what? I saw plenty of no-hitters when I was covering minor league baseball for 20 years. Carlton Smith pitched 7 innings of a no-hitter, just like Tugboat. He didn't pitch the whole thing. Carlton Smith won 7 innings of a no-hitter. It was combined no-hitter. Can you believe? Carlton Smith, right? I hope right now you're thinking to yourself, who's Carlton Smith? Because if you are, I made my point. He never made it to the big leagues. So there's no guarantee that Tugboat Wilkins, even though he has a cool nickname, is going to make it to the major leagues. So really, the Guardians know that Patrick Bailey is a Gold Glove catcher, right? The Giants do not know if Matt Tugboat Wilkinson will ever pitch for them. They don't know that. So right there, the Guardians have won the trade. At this point, they've won the trade. Look, when they deserve to get ripped, I'll rip them. I was steaming mad when they sent George Valera down. Steaming mad. I'll tell you what, I'd rather see George Valera in left field right now than Stephen Kwan. And I'd definitely rather see Petey Halpin in center field rather than Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan is terrible right now. But we're afraid to criticize Stephen Kwan. We're afraid, kind of like we're afraid to criticize Francisco Lindor. Or we're afraid to criticize Donovan Mitchell. I'm not even going to get into if you criticize Shirer Sanders, because that's a whole nother level of you're a terrible person if you criticize him. But look, Stephen Kwan is hitting 125 over the last 7 days. He's been terrible. Okay? So we're going to go, the last 7 days. That's not a lot. Well, let's go the last 15 days. How's he hitting over the last 15 days? He's at the bottom. 173 over the last 15. Chase DeLauder's hitting 444 at that time. So don't tell me, they fade Grace Pitt. No, they haven't. The last 30 days. He's at the bottom. 177 over the last month. Brian Rocchio, who fans hated before he got sent to the minors last year, he's hitting 312 in the last month. Chase DeLauder's hitting 311. Daniel Schneeman's hitting 308. Jose Stardate, he's hitting 260. Stephen Kwan is hitting 177 with an OPS of 498. So, but I'll criticize guys when they deserve to be criticized. But I also watch all the teams. Even though I'm not a Browns fan, I watch all the teams. I think that makes me more objective with the Browns because I'm not a fan. And I have nothing at stake. So if they play well, I can say they play well. If they don't play well, I can say it. Let me tell you something. I'll criticize the Guardians enough. I ripped them apart. I did a video commentary, the day they demoted George Valera. I was livid. Unlike these guys on the sports stations who don't have a clue, who act like they know everything just because they're on a radio station or just because they're on a YouTube show that is owned by a large corporation. That doesn't mean they know anything more than I do. You know, that's like the guy who carries the radar gun when he forgot his batteries at home just so he looks important. Yeah. We have one of those in Cleveland. Focuses on the minor leagues. Oh, believe me, I know this because he said it to me. I said, well, then why are you bringing it down there? Oh, because I look important. Yep. So, let's get back to the team. Chase DeLauder's still hot. George Valera, minor leagues now. Bo Naylor, they're 0-2 without him. He's in the minor leagues. As of right now, the pitching staff is 11th in Major League Baseball with a 3.94 ERA. They fell one spot from last week when they were 10th, when their ERA was 3.88. So the ERA went up. The bullpen ERA is 16th, 3.98. That did go down from 4.17 last week. So that's a good sign that the bullpen is still pitching well. The offense. Well, not that we haven't talked about the offense being a problem ever before, but we're going to talk about it tonight because it's a problem. See, I'm going to criticize him. But I have credibility criticizing them because I don't fawn over them always. I'll be critical when they need to be. You know, by the way, if you want to hear Cleveland sports talk that's even, Tuesday nights at 9, myself and Joey Schneider host Two Guys Talk Cleveland Sports, where amazingly we're able to do this. Talk about the Cavs for the first 20 minutes, the Guardians for the next 20 minutes, and the Browns for the next 20 minutes. That's every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Tune in. See sports talk that's actually even. That's not a bunch of bullshit fawning over the football team. But let's go to the Guardians offense here. The offense is now 26th in Major League Baseball. They fell 7 spots last week when their average went down 5 points. They were hitting 235. They're now hitting 230, which is terrible. I mean, I know, people always complain about you can't win without signing big name guys, but you could if you played your best hitters, which they don't. They're back to the BS platooning shit. The high spending Mariners and Mets are still behind them. The slugging percentage is 26th. They're at 368. They went down 19 points. Their slugging percentage fell in 1 week. They ranked 17th last week, so that's bad. But when you send George Valera down and you bring up Petey Halpin, who hitting the ball to the warning track, it probably makes him feel like he hit a grand slam. Your power numbers are going to drop. On base percentage, it fell 1 spot from 15th to 16th. They're at 321 now. Last week they were at 323. Their OPS, they're 23rd at 689. They fell under 700. They fell 21 points, their OPS, since last week. They were 14th at 710. So they have 40 home runs. Last week they had 35. The runs scored, they're 16th. They scored 18 runs this week, people. 18 runs in 7 games. So what is that? Not even a 2.5 average. Not even, just over 2.5 runs per game. That's terrible. You're not winning anything doing that crap. They played a terrible series. They went 2-2 against Kansas City in Kansas City, and then they came home and, I guess we'll say it, they shit the bed against the Minnesota Twins after winning on Friday night. They were god-awful the rest of the weekend. They scored 4 runs in the next 2 games. They were god-awful. All right? They were. So this upcoming week, they will play they welcome the Los Angeles Angels in 4 games on, what do we got here? They got games Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 6:10, 6:10, and 1:10 on Monday, 6:10 on Tuesday, and 1:10 on Wednesday. And we'll get you the probables here in a second. We got, what do we got here? We will see on Sunday night or Monday night, we will see Joey Cantillo, 2-1, 3.43 ERA. The Angels do not have a starter for tomorrow night, TBD. Tuesday night, 6:10, Slade Ciccone, the arsonist, will be pitching because he torches the bullpen every time he pitches. He's 2-4 with his ERA went down to 6.15. Look at that. He'll be facing Juan Urena, who's 1-3 with a 3.22. And then on Wednesday at 1:10 with the day game, businessman special, Parker Messick, 4-1 with a 2.30, will face lefty Reed Detmers, who's 1-3 with a 4.33. And then after the Angels, the Guardians will welcome in the Cincinnati Reds and former manager. And that'll be May 15th, 16th, and 17th. Friday, Saturday, have an off day on Thursday. Will be 1:40, the standard weekend times here in Cleveland. It's funny because Tom Hamilton complains about 3 different weekend times when they're on the road, but he never complains about it when they're home. It's funny. I find that kind of funny. They were going to complain about the opponent. That's pretty much it with that. With the upcoming week, I'm going to say that I could be optimistic at this point. The offense is going south. The pitching's been about the same. The starters have been about the same. Bullpen's been a little better. It's been better. So that's good. But, if you're only scoring 2.5 runs a game like they did this week, you're not going to win much. It's kind of crazy that they won 3 games scoring that much. So next week, like I said, I mentioned the 6 games they have. So my prediction that I do every week at the end of the show, I was actually optimistic last week because I thought they would go 4-3. I thought they'd split with Kansas City and take 2 out of 3 from the Twins, which they didn't do. But I think we're going to go with next week. They're going to go 2-4 and drop out of first place. I think I'm going to say by the time we meet next week, they're going to be 23-25, and in second or maybe even third place because they're not playing well. They're not playing well, and they'll take the Angels lightly because wins don't matter, and they'll win one against the Angels, and then they'll win one against the Reds if they don't get swept by the Reds, who are playing very well, by the way. So that's what we got. I'm gonna say 2-4 next week, and then we'll see. We'll meet here next week at 9:00, and we'll see what's going on. We'll see if they prove me right or they prove me wrong. They've been proving me wrong a lot this year. A few times I was more than pessimistic. Most of the time, hopefully, I think it's just not looking good right now. They're lucky they're in the AL Central, and they can still be in first place with a terrible record like this. Although there are only 4 teams. There are only 4 teams over 500 in the American League. 2 in the American League East. The Guardians in the Central are at 500, and the Athletics in the West. So the American League isn't exactly good. So until next week, I hope I'm in trouble that AT&T told me I would not have once I switched to their fiber. They lied to me, of course. I mean, these big corporations, they lie to you every day, right? So until next week, go Guardians. Hopefully they have a good week. Hopefully they're over 500 for the week. And, let's say we're on the Guardian show, but let's say go Cavs. Win game 4 tomorrow night. And then go to Detroit and steal game 5. And then come back home maybe and win. But so go Cavs too. And we will see you next Sunday night at 9:00 for another edition of Guardians Weekly Report. No analytics here.